residing in volcanoes and.
So is he pretty much saying now that
it's not about
too late for us to do anything? Is that essentially what he's saying now?
Yes, he is saying, and he is saying issues that humans are doing. But he said issues of polluting that the whole world won't be according to him. It's about the external. No, he said factors that are coming in onto the earth from what space. We've got to do is accommodate one another, and that is we are subjected to, and it's going right into the perils of, and it's warming the earth. The earth is expanding. Climate. And so that's the way everything is in the way
so
of
it's really
disruptions
moving
to the
now
crust of the earth.
Responding to what's inevitable, basically.
Yes. And that knows, the people who are scientifically in the know that this is inevitable. They know what is happening, okay? But if they do, put it out to the press and open, which they try to do, it gets squashed, okay? The whole Illuminati and black hats just don't want it out there. They're preparing themselves for this, and everybody that joins them, they are preparing themselves. I mean, there are masses of underground cities that are there, okay, and there are masses of you can call them valleys deep underground that are still not habitable, are able to be habitable, but they're not inhabited at the moment. Besides the ones that they've already been working on for nearly 50 years. Okay.
Do you think it's a valid response? I mean, part of me just seems to sort of feel that it's like they still haven't really fully understood what's most important, So that's just a.
No, I agree with you. You see, I agree with you because this is the response of somebody who is scared and they want to save their skin, not their soul. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they preparing army to defend other people that are coming to their dry land and so on, and their habitable lands, and they also preparing to go underground with radiation and stuff like that, and flooding, because you can just close the gates and so on, and they're growing. I mean, people living in those cities, and it's across quite a few countries. Obviously China and Russia, who I think I sense from what's going on at the moment, they are sort of going to become partners in some sort of way, but they've got underground cities in some European countries and certainly America and so on. So, yeah, and as I mentioned last time.
So you think that China and Russia do have a common understanding on some of these things? Or?
I think what brings them together is that they have common enemies, or people they don't like. I don't think necessarily that they're coming together because they want to come together. Okay.
Because they're quite different cultures, aren't they?
Totally and utterly. Okay. But Russia's also now becoming anti-Australian. They're also passing comments now that support China. Okay. And so you just see little things happening. But yes, they're totally different culture
And do you think that those questions that you've been asked by your Saturday afternoon group about Australia, do you think that's sort of like testing you in some way, or?
I think so. It's a very unusual topic to ask somebody to talk about stereotypes, and particularly Australians' impression of Russian stereotypes. Okay, and it's funny. You gave me yours, and But Sue and I, we see a big man in a furry coat and a hat on his head, and he's and
But isn't it
possibly
ironic though? Like a lot of the Hollywood movies, it's always the Russians are the bad guys,
yeah,
they're the black hats and
that's right. That's how they. But all the time, it's become a lot more subtle now within the Western society. Whereas before, it was the Russians that were, you could depict a Russian in any way you want, but he would be the bad guy. Okay,
mm.
um,
Yeah,
and so then
it's sort of migrated from the political bad guy to the organized crime bad guy, the Russian mafia or the
yes,
you
yeah.
know yeah. So are the people that you're talking to, are they aware of some of those stereotypes?
I don't know. The person who suggested the topic last week was his first appearance on my I'm going to say on my show,
Mm,
on my Skype, and so I don't know him at all,
mm,
and there's no way of finding out much
mm.
about him because
So how were you intending on responding? Like, were you just going to?
I'm going to do the traditional thing. Every country has a stereotype in the perception of other countries. So I've started doing a little bit of research and found that, you know, Australian stereotypes, are basically what you can. There's an element of truth about them, okay. But I might go a step further and find the stereotype of the traditional nation here in Australia, the Aborigines, and
I think that would be a more authentic approach, because my sense of it is when you look at how young the country is in terms of Western civilization, it's overwhelmingly influenced by the UK.
yeah,
Overwhelmingly. So
yeah, sure.
mm,
So that's what I'll probably do, and I'll probably dig a little bit deeper into the Russians. I'll probably present it with a bit of humor as
mm.
well. I think,
I think that's a good idea. Because my sense is that like we're such a small nation by world standards,
yeah,
but in some respects we're like a noisy chihuahua, aren't we? We sort of bark a lot louder than we're probably entitled to in some respects.
well,
And in some ways we're not very humble about that either. So
yeah, and you've got a good economy and that Western Australia, uh, through this whole coronavirus story, we're not in debt.
no, that's right. Yeah, it's bouncing back quite quickly. Yeah.
And with China not buying our products in Western Australia,
Mm.
that could put us back.
Criticisms of Australia within its own region is that it's misaligned with its neighbours, which is Asia.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and if you look at it geographically, we should be an Asian nation, but we're not.
yeah,
So
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that's and the migration and stuff has started to address that. The Asian migration levels pretty much started with Vietnam. But and I mean, in the early days, there was always a fairly strong Chinese presence here, like through gold rushes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're almost treated as an underclass, as slaves virtually.
Mm.
But the Asian migration now is probably, if not the highest, one of the highest.
Yeah, yeah,
So logically speaking, you'd think, well, in the next 20 years, you'd think we'd become an Asian nation, in terms of population and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, it's interesting because Moya makes it uh, uh, absolutely clear that there's we we're moving in the process of the final root race of mankind. Now, the final root race, the world will have a tan skin,
Mm.
okay, which is basically Asian. It's actually a beautiful skin,
Mm.
beautiful color. Everybody will be brown,
Mm.
tan,
Mm.
okay,
Mm.
um, and so for that to happen, I guess whatever the future brings, you know, the current Asians will probably dominate the, the population numbers in the future,
Mm.
either through conquering or through catastrophes,
Mm.
um, and and they will settle down into
Yeah.
I don't know what will happen to those that love their white skin, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So
When you sort of look at it, try and look at it objectively, white skin doesn't seem natural, does it? Really? When you look at a lot of the indigenous populations.
yeah,
Sort
well,
of.
it does for northern hemisphere
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is natural there because the sun
Mm.
didn't get to tan them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, the cold climate dwellers. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, uh,
Yeah, because there really aren't any cold climates in the southern hemisphere to any great extent, is there, really?
no, not,
Mm.
and
Mm.
it doesn't matter who you look at. The indigenous people of South Africa, who are also very small in number, um, also have a brown skin, much like your Aborigines have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The really, very black skin are like the Nigerians from Central Africa.